and welcome to this year edition of the EU Green Week. For the next few days, we're going to be focusing on the strategy of growth to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. But because 2022 is also the European Year of Youth, before the official opening, we have a youth dialogue. I have with me today 27 very eager young Europeans that are going to be asked straight questions to the Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevičius. My name is Beatriz Rios. I'm going to be your host, and before we jump into the conversation, check out this video.
We have the power to make things change and to lead future generations.
What does nature mean to you?
Survival.
Being away from my daily life.
Peace.
Future.
Let life live.
Please do whatever it is possible to start the action flowing now and refuse delaying it further. There is no time to delay the action further.
Good morning, Commissioner. Very powerful messages coming out of this video, and I expect very strong questions as well. Are you ready?
Good morning, everyone. Absolutely. I'm extremely thrilled and excited to be here with you, starting our Green Week from our discussion. Finally, we can do it live, and I think it will be interesting to watch, but of course interesting to talk. And I'm very thankful to everyone who contributed to a video. It is, of course, a very powerful message, an extremely important message, because it's not only, let's say, message to the youth, but to the world, because we, of course, need COP15 to happen, and we need a global framework for biodiversity, which would be ambitious, which would be up to a task to stop the loss of biodiversity. Because at the end of the day, I feel very often by discussing the 2050 agenda, we so much focused on emissions and how we're going to decrease those emissions, which is a great thing to do. I'm also a big fan of innovations, but we forget a very basic thing is our ecosystem, our oceans, forests, soil, and etc. And keeping on, unfortunately, but not treating them well, destroying them. Our effort at 2050 might not be enough, even if we reach the mathematical zero. So I think the message is very powerful, very important, and I hope today we will even reinforce it together with you. So my huge thank you for being here today, and I'm ready, of course, to discuss, and thank you for hosting.
And precisely about nature and biodiversity is going to be our first segment, so stay with us. The first question is coming from Julia from Austria.
Yes, as I'm the first one to speak here, maybe I can speak for all of us that we thank you that you gave us this opportunity to be here and to give us this platform. As you said, my question is in regards to the biodiversity crisis, and we were wondering if you think that the EU is doing enough to address the nature crisis, especially as you've mentioned, we are facing different various crises right now, and maybe biodiversity is not on our top priority list. And how can we as young people contribute to the success of the CBD COP15?
Please, Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Excellent question to kick in, a challenging one. Are we doing enough? I would say enough can be done, or can be said that enough is done when we probably reach the most important goal, is halting biodiversity loss. Until it's happening, it's not enough. So, of course, we need to do more. What I'm very proud that we're probably doing the most ever, and the EU is, with the introduction of the Green Deal, been very active. active in setting not only the domestic framework, very ambitious, with ambitious agenda, but also global one. As regards the biodiversity strategy, I think we have extremely ambitious strategy with some of the components already being implemented. 30 for 30 target, for example, with including 10% of strict protection zones. But of course, we need to do more. We need to step up implementation. We need to ensure that what we call the marine protected areas or protected areas, that they are really protected. That legislation is, of course, up to a task. We need to stop the loss of pollinators. We have to do a lot in actually making our practices more sustainable. And I'm happy that we not only contribute to these goals with, let's say, those very obvious legislation or strategies like the forests or soil, but let's say indirect ones like circular economy action plan, which is very well accepted, and I wish that biodiversity strategy one day will be as well accepted by the stakeholders and businesses and people and politicians all across Europe. They want to associate with circular economy and want more circularity in their countries. But it's not only good, let's say, ensuring that those resources stay as long as possible with us, but it also significantly decreases pressure on environment. So I'm very happy that we, let's say, find those different ways how to approach. Now, what youth can do more, I think youth now have a huge power in spreading the messages. So, of course, spreading a message about COP15, about our biodiversity COP, is extremely important because society, unfortunately, is not there yet as they are with climate. But society came to the level of understanding, realizing climate crisis because of actually loud voices of youth who were consistent. We've seen every Friday people on the streets in different capitals, and that was spreading so fast all across the globe with very clear climate messages. I think we need to do the same with biodiversity, because at the moment, I feel that we still take it as given, something that is not going to disappear, and sometimes, you know, the disappearance or threat of species disappearing is not getting enough of the coverage. That's why each and every of your voice is extremely important to spread those messages, to draw attention, to realize, for example, what pollinators do, and if we lose them, there is no technology that can replace them.
A very complex issue when we all have a role to play. Now I'm going to stay in the same geographical area, going to Hungary. Matthias, go ahead, ask your question.
I would like to ask, what steps have been taken so far to achieve a goal of planting 3 billion trees to 2030?
That's a very positive agenda that we have, and I'm very proud of it. I truly deeply convinced that we're not only going to reach the goal of 3 billion, but we're going to overpass it. So I think the preparation and the kickoff is done. I myself now, when it's of course planting time, trying to go to member states and of course initiate tree planting as well. We have a huge interest on our app, and it's increasing. So more and more countries, organizations, member states, organizations, regions, they want to register for tree planting. So I think what we have to do now is actually to prepare very well for autumn, because autumn will be the tree planting season. So spread a message as wide as possible. Plan also probably my agenda to get involved as much as possible and do some massive tree planting during the autumn. Just a few months ago, I was back home in Lithuania, and there was a national tree planting, and in one day we managed to plant 2 million trees. So we're talking about one of the smallest countries in the EU. So imagine what could countries like France or Germany could do in one day only. So I'm deeply convinced that we can surpass this goal. And this is something very positive that can also unite communities from young to old. Everyone shares the love to trees. And most importantly, also to plant the right trees at the right place, so create the forest of the future so that they would be resilient to future shocks and, of course, would contribute to our decarbonization goals.
Absolutely, and a way also to contribute to that strategy to preserve biodiversity. Now I go to Italy. Laura, you have the floor.
Hi. First of all, I represent the ENI CBC-MED program, which is the largest EU-funded cooperation program in the Mediterranean. My concern is on the certification. It is a problem increasingly affecting Europe. During the past 50 years, it has increased 1% each year until the fact that nearly 70% of the European soil is already damaged. And the situation is especially worrying in the Mediterranean region, where rainfalls are expected to decrease up to 30% during this century. And I want to ask you, how can we adapt to this situation? Especially, how can we work together with our southern Mediterranean neighbors in order to face this common challenge?
I think very relevant question, as we are in 2022, so 30 years since Rio. So of course we need to look what we have managed to achieve in those 30 years. But my answer to this is very simple. First of all, we have to restore nature. If we keep on, with business as usual, and ecosystems will keep to degrade, we won't be able to cope with the issues. We will be reacting after something tragic is happening, but we won't be able to keep up with the pace that nature sets us. So I think what's very important, of course, and very soon, we will be launching our nature restoration legislation. Secondly, I think the very important, and maybe not noticed by so many, but very important breaking point was achieved when member states send a clear signal that they are ready for soil legislation. So soil, which is a crucial basically ecosystem, has been treated different. It didn't have the same level of protection as water or air, for example, here in the EU. So I think we will be working very hard together with the services, and next year we will put a soil legislation to ensure soil protection across the EU, because I relate very much what you were asking, the question and emphasizing on a Mediterranean region, but I think the issues are coming to all parts of the EU if we won't react on time. And so I think legislation on soil protection is going to be crucial here to achieve the goals. And then when we speak about, of course, our international cooperation, I think working on the certification on UN level is crucial.
Yeah, indeed. The certification is a big issue, not only in Europe, but in other countries as well. We're already experiencing the consequences of it. Thank you so much, Julia, Matthias, and Laura, for your questions. Now we're going to move into the next segment, where we're going to be talking about the consequences of the war and the pandemic and their impact on the environment. And the first question is coming from Ioana in Romania.
Thank you. I'm representing the organization Pur și Simplu Verde from Romania. And I think we all saw that we faced a pandemic. We are facing a war in Ukraine, and energy prices are soaring. So because of all of these crises, a lot of member states had to make some difficult decisions, including some decisions that are not very environmentally friendly. Some of them are using more coal, maybe relaxing environmental protection and regulations. And my question for you is, how does the Commission prepare for the next crisis such that environment would not be sacrificed and we will still be on track to net zero by 2050?
Very timely discussion considering the European Council today.
Absolutely. No, but I think, what's very important is consistency. And consistency as regards the European Green Deal. It proved us, and we had these multiple attempts during the COVID to question the Green Deal, the importance of the Green Deal. We have a similar attempts now, but I think the further we advance the Green Deal, it's proving its value. And, postponing something as regards the Green Deal, either of the components, energy transition, transport sector transition, or, ecosystems protection of environment, would be a historical mistake. And we cannot allow that to happen. Because if you look where all the issues that spur, from example, as regards the war, most of them due to our heavy dependency on fossil fuels. So clearly, a solution is to ensure that we are fully energy independent, that we can ensure energy market stability, that, of course, prices are not skyrocketing to our citizens, and the Green Deal can give most of the answers to those matters. So I would say that, on contrary, war gives another reason to actually push harder and fast forward the changes, especially as regards the energy transition. And as you know, with REPowerEU, we already have plans of decreasing the imports of Russian gas by 2/3 already this year, and then continue successfully to eliminate Russian fossil fuels from EU energy mix. But same goes with other fossil fuels. We should fast forward their elimination. And I'm happy that in the new proposal on concrete, as regards the concrete steps, how REPowerEU is going to be implemented, one of the goals that has been changed is actually renewables goal, which has been increased from 40% in 2030 to 45%, which is already a huge step forward. And will require, of course, enormous efforts, but I'm sure that will be another contribution in implementing the Green Deal and proving that the Green Deal is resilient to any of the unexpected crises that this world is seeing. So I think here we all can play a significant role as well. I think what's very important part that is now playing a bigger and bigger role is also energy efficiency, which will require, of course, a contribution from Europeans. So I hope that, step by step, we all together with our actions will prove that the Green Deal is the answer.
Indeed, we have seen that because we have a war, the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis doesn't stop, and it's a good thing that the EU has put renewables at the core of this REPowerEU strategy. Now, we don't only have representatives from all EU member states, but also other European countries. So for the next question, I would like to give the floor to Hlif from Ukraine.
Your Excellency, Russian devastating war has already caused a significant damage for more than a quarter of all Ukrainian ecosystems. The aggressors' missiles strike critical infrastructure, industrial facilities on ongoing daily basis in the middle of the European continent. As a consequence, toxic materials spread into rivers, soil and atmosphere. That is why I would ask you the following question. Could the European Union support holding Russia accountable for the damage of the environment and climate, as well as force the aggressor to pay contributions and reparations, not only for Ukraine as a victim, but for all nations indirectly affected as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your excellent question. So, first of all, of course, you absolutely you're absolutely right that at the moment there is a tragic loss of human lives every day. Innocent children, women, men die in Ukraine. Infrastructure, cities are being destroyed, but on top of that, nature as well. And destroying of nature, forest fires, leaks of chemicals, waste treatment facilities, water treatment facilities being bombarded, and all that is programming long-term effects on nature. And we know that pollution respects no borders. So that's definitely going to have an effect on countries who are bordering Ukraine, even going further, because we know that through the rivers, most likely most of that pollution will end up in seas and oceans. So there is a immense war crime that it's at the moment is being done. And EU just recently introduced the framework for rebuilding Ukraine, which I subscribe to every word of it, because I think that will be our first of all most important task to rebuild Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure that many actually will contribute, not only Europeans, but I also just returned from G7 meeting where Japan, US was raising the same issues, and I think everyone is aiming to do so and help and contribute in rebuilding Ukraine. But I fully agree with you. First of all, it also has to be done with the money of taxpayers of Russia, because this is the war crime which they are doing on Ukrainian soil. And of course, we have to have legal framework. It has to be a decisions. That's why we cooperating very closely with Ukraine, with the Ministry of Environment, to document and ensure that we do a proper monitoring of what war crimes, environmental crimes are done, and of course we have to hold Russia accountable. Not only accountable as regards, putting sort of a public pressure and so on, but also contributing to rebuilding of Ukraine, and we need to find the ways, because of course it's not going to be easy to get, for example, reparations from them for the crimes that they have done. So we need to look at those probably freezed assets that we have. Can they be used, for example, after, of course, court decisions in rebuilding Ukraine? And, my aim is very simple. We'll have a unique chance to rebuild wonderful Ukraine, more resilient as regards the nature, probably more digital, but most importantly, we should not do mistakes sometimes that are being done. I think we must rebuild it very nature-friendly, which will allow, because I grew up myself also in a city, in an area which is old Soviet blocks, which doesn't give us let's say a place for community to meet, talk, engage. It's very much separated and so on. So I think we should not do those mistakes of the Soviet planning. We should actually give a completely new colors to beautiful cities of Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure that European citizens will contribute. We're already talking that each member state could choose a different city where they would contribute for rebuilding. That would bring, of course, Europeans even closer to Ukraine. So there is big plans, but first of all, of course, we have to ensure that the war is over and Russia withdraws its troops from the Ukrainian territory and leaves it forever.
Last week, we saw a proposal from the Commission, indeed, to make easier the potential use of those frozen assets to pay for the reconstruction. And today, the European Council will be discussing as well how to contribute to the rebuilding of Ukraine. Now we go to France with Meryl. What's your question?
Hi. How will the pandemic and the war in Ukraine affect the transition to a greener economy and the degradation of biodiversity? Is there a risk of delay in achieving the targets, and how the EU addressing this? Is the EU addressing this?
Absolutely, very good question, continuing what we already discussed. So on one hand, I think we might require a short-term decisions in ensuring that, for example, our energy market is stable, ensuring a stable prices to consumers. But overall, I think there is no threat for 2030 or 2050 goals. We are on track, and we will continue to implement them. As I said, war in Ukraine clearly shows that our dependencies on fossil fuels, where again, you don't have many markets to buy, for example, gas, and I think you know that our dependency is, of course, extremely dangerous. Not only looking from the environmental perspective, but geopolitical as well. So I think, on contrary, it gives another push to actually implement the agenda. Speaking about the other issues, which we very much focus, for example, on fossil fuels, but we should also speak about our, food production, how dependent it is on fertilizers. So, and then again, if you look where fertilizer is bought, okay, some member states can produce it themselves, but it's a very simple chemical reaction where you need gas. So again, you turn to the same markets. We are heavily dependent on Russia and Belarus. So there's another actually push for a decrease of used fertilizers. So again, our agenda proves that it's right in the long term, and it's not only about greening Europe, about living in maintaining the planetary boundaries, but it's also about our freedom.
And we will be talking about food a little bit later. But for the next segment, I'm going to thank you first, Joanna, Gleb, and Meryl for your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner, for your answers. And now we move to the next segment where we are going to be talking about fashion and textiles. And for the first question, we go to Bulgaria with Radost.
Thank you. As we know, the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries on Earth, with its effects reaching water, with water pollution, an enormous amount of waste, and CO2 emissions. And the EU has realized that threat with the recently announced strategy for sustainable textiles. However, most of the goals in this strategy are destined for 2030. And as we discussed earlier here with everyone, we need more concrete short-term actions in order to see how these initiatives, these legislations, and these strategies progress through time, and in order to be able to hold people in power accountable for this. So my question is, looking at the recently announced strategy for fashion and textiles, what are the milestones and initiatives that are foreseen for the near future?
Yes, thank you very much. A very good question. I'm actually very excited, and I'm very happy and proud of what we proposed under the textile strategy. Because on one hand, textiles, they really close to us, and we saw this very strange trend where textiles would get cheaper indeed, but European households would spend more on, for example, clothes than they used to be. So there is no savings, and there is huge impact on the planet, because 99% of textiles are ending up in landfills, in incineration. So not only those resources that you have said as regards, producing textiles being used, but they basically been wasted because when the product is thrown away without a long period of usage, it's a waste of those resources. So I think what's very important that already next year we will be introducing responsibility scheme where, of course, we will try to ensure that the collection of textiles is reaching another level, and recycling is actually a norm for textiles. That will require additional efforts. So, for example, we will be looking at possibilities of actually banning of mixing certain fibers, which today prevents, for example, for recycling to happen. We will be slowly looking at increasing a part of recycled fiber in newly produced products. So that's going to be a very concrete steps which will ensure that those textiles that arrive onto a market, that they not being only sold, but there is actually producer's responsibility which is extended, and they must to take care of the product until the end of a life cycle, so it doesn't end up in incineration. Another thing which I think is extremely important is also ensuring that textiles that are produced, they serve us as long as possible. So of course, for us, it will be important to ensure that there is a repairability of textiles. And of course, that we will be driving the fast fashion out of fashion. The last but not least, consumers, they also have to play an important part. So with the digital product passport, we will give the full information to consumers. So how textiles were produced, what was the impact on the environment, what resources were used, how much of those resources were used, and how long these textiles can, for example, last. Is it going to be already unusable after 2 washes and so on? We have to remember, I know that we always debate about the cheaper and cheaper price for consumers, which is of course important, that as many as possible households would have to access to products. But very often that race for cheaper price leads us to a very low standards. Very low environmental standards, very low labor standards as well, where people working in the industry gets extremely low wages and etc. So we need to find that balance, that we start racing not for the cheapest price, but for the best quality. And consumer, of course, having the full information, will be able to choose between those qualities. Another thing which is also important, and we will be addressing it very soon, hopefully latest by 2024 in textiles, is destruction of unsold goods. As we know, everyone wants to let's say, have those trendy goods, and very often shops, when they don't sell it, they destroy them. So it's even worse. So a lots of resources that being used, they never even reach the consumers. So of course, we'll probably going to look at different options. One of the options is, of course, full transparency, but I wouldn't exclude that very soon we will be moving to a ban of destruction of unsold goods. So there is a lot of initiatives planned. Youth will also have to play an important role, because very often, even without knowing that, they become the ambassadors of certain brands, of certain trends. So of course your role is going to be crucial to play, and driving fast fashion out of fashion will be very much in your hands. And as I said, I'm very excited about this topic, but where I believe that we will reach a success, because business also see that they will have to change their business model from the current one, and they already, looking for a huge step forward as regards, chemicals that are used to produce textiles. So I hope with the legislation we will ensure that there is not a linear model, but a cycle model, that there is a production of fibers that are, in the end of the day, could be reused for producing a new textiles. And of course, textile will be contributing heavily to actually not only for all of us to look so pretty, but actually to also ensuring that our planet looks also pretty.
I'm sure that Rados will be looking very closely how that strategy is implemented and then the milestones are actually reached. Now I would like to go to Spain, and I would like to give the floor to Irene.
Thank you. You mentioned the part of involving of the parts in protecting the environment and in the textile companies, but sometimes the small companies can have and take action due to the short resources they have. So how can we promote corporate sustainable governance in the textile company, especially in the small ones?
Yes, very good question. So on one hand, it's probably easier to work concretely with the whole sector, and we have outlined most of those actions which I just named in our textile strategy. Then when it goes to, of course, concrete companies' responsibilities, it's much more difficult. Of course, EU has adopted sustainability criteria for even for value chains. But of course, how they are implemented will depend a lot on companies. So we're ready to cooperate very closely with member states, with companies, ensuring that first of all, greenwashing is avoided and that there is no corners that can be cut. Because I think it's not only sort of, fooling of consumers, which is shameful, but it is also unequal competition, which we should ensure that it's not existing. And those who are ready to do things completely different and take a additional responsibility has to be incentivized and rewarded. There is still a long way to go, but I truly believe that it's the right way to go, because when the businesses will be able to calculate in their operational costs of the environment, they will have a completely different understanding and respect to the environment. Because when I said what I said at the very beginning of our discussion, that society takes certain nature services as a given. That's one of the things with businesses as well. They take it as a given because there is no costs incorporated into their, let's say, operational production costs of environmental pressure that they're doing. So it has to be also a change in corporate engine rooms, realizing that those costs are there, how to minimize them, because business very much oriented into minimizing the costs, and how to actually have the positive agenda out of it. And I think, at the end of the day, as always, consumers will play a crucial role. And I'm very proud of young generation who is already putting a big pressure, looking very carefully what are the company statements and what are the real actions, and with certain cultural movements, ensuring that those who actually not only announce but actually follow sustainability standards get rewarded, and those who are not actually gets punished for misleading.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Irene and Rados, for your question. Now we move into the next segment, where we are going to be talking about environmentally friendly food production and fishing. And for the first question, we go to Germany. Pia, you have the floor.
Yeah, so my question is, why does the EU support intensive agriculture, which clearly threatens biodiversity and also pollutes drinking waters? And it also takes up large areas of land that are urgently needed for species conservation or for carbon sequestration, for example, through afforestation or recultivation of peatlands.
So that's a very good question, and I cannot approach it only from my portfolio view, because I also have to let's say, look at it from the eyes of the farmers, how they see these processes. And I think what's very pity that unfortunately we do not start our agriculture policies, our food production from zero. They've been designed through many, many years, and some of the practices that now we know and finally we talk about it as environmentally damaging, and we put lots of pressure to implement certain directives and so on, they were actually subsidized. They were enhanced by policies for many, many years. So of course it will require time for a change, time for understanding, for realization of what practices they are actually not only bad for the environment, but they also destroying the income of the farmers. And I always in the discussions trying to explain this rationale, and I feel very bad about certain lobbies acting and trying to put that environmental policies are against farmers. On contrary, they are for farmers. And if nature, if soil, for example, pollinators doing well, then you have a completely different perspective of yields, rather than, I don't know any farmer who would like to purchase and work on land which is completely degraded. So there is still a long way to go. I think our nature restoration law will be a strong push forward in actually not only in restoring degraded ecosystems and so on, but actually looking at the real situation and talking about the real situation in certain member states and how situation can be changed and what actually benefits it can bring. Because I see this sometimes immediate reaction of, let's say, with the context of war, that we have to even intensify our farming practices, which unfortunately does not solve the issues of the situation, what happening in Ukraine. Another thing, again, our dependencies on fossil fuels, our dependencies on fertilizers, they are dangerous. They're putting a enormous pressure and endangers our food security. So I hope with the biodiversity strategy, with the goals that are there, with implementation of those goals, with implementation of the nature restoration law, with soil strategy, but also soil law, we will go into a completely new level. But we also have to reach a completely new level of environment and farmers' relations to show that this legislation is actually for them, and we appreciate the services that they're doing, but we need to do it differently than maybe we used to, and that was, you know, the business as sort of usual. It has to change, and we see that there is those positive change. Unfortunately, it's still not enough, and our policies, they should be incentivizing that change.
Absolutely. We have seen an attempt to transform the EU agricultural policy that some member states were not very happy to see. Anyway, so we move to the next speaker from your home country, actually, Lithuania. So Rimante, please go ahead.
I represent Urban Bee.lt, and we actually aim to restore bee populations in the cities, because we know that bees population worldwide decreases by 30%, approximately 30% each year, which is actually a huge number considering that we actually depend on pollinators such as bees. So I wondered, how does the European Commission addresses the challenges of loss of pollinators? So
that's a very important, I think, topic to address and talk, and not only, you know, in as regards the part of bees, sort of, but wild pollinators in overall picture, because of course their decline is putting enormous threat, especially to, we just discussed, to agriculture here in Europe, but also globally. So of course one of the key issues is of course cut on use of fertilizers. I think we have done enough, and we have enough scientific evidence to show what are the key reasons to decrease of pollinators. So of course, first of all, you know, our fight with the pollution is a crucial platform here. So with reaching zero pollution objectives, we will ensure that, of course, pollinators do better. Then, of course, as I already mentioned, use of pesticides and fertilizers, which we will be addressing and proposing together with our nature restoration legislation. It will be two crucial parts, but I'm also very happy that Slovenian presidency, they actually, you know, were the one who were putting huge emphasis as regards the pollinators. And I think that helped raise a profile of pollinators within the council as well, within the member states. And I think the work that will help us advance the work that we already doing. But the answer is very simple. We have to cut pollution first, because pollution is the direct threat to pollinators, to our ecosystems.
Indeed. We go to the Netherlands now. Wouter, do you have a question?
Yes, dear Commissioner, the rates of overfishing are increasing, and the EU is still subsidizing fisheries, which are mostly meant for sustainable fishing, but they have been shown to be used for overfishing practices. And simultaneously, the EU is promoting fish consumption, while it would be much more logical to promote plant-based diets, because they are better for farmers, for biodiversity, and for the climate. And what the EU is essentially doing is keeping a business alive that is very far from sustainable and becoming less sustainable even now. So my question is, why does the EU still subsidize fisheries? And why does the EU promote fish consumption with campaigns?
Okay, so that's a very good question where I probably cannot subscribe fully to what you have said. I think a lot has been done, and I'm very thankful to our fisheries community as regards the sustainable fisheries, and we really moved a lot. If you look at the certain stocks, especially in the North Sea and Atlantic, Baltic Sea, we have reached an incredible result. Yes, we have sea basins where the stocks are still overfished, and we need to do much more work. But now when we speak about our EMFF or MFF now, the new fund for fisheries and aquaculture, it cannot call it a subsidies to fisheries, because this is an important sector which on one hand employing a lot of coastal communities, which provides food on our tables. And to be honest, it's a small proportion of fish that we eat comes actually from our waters, because 70% of fish we actually import. But nevertheless, those money are first of all used, and the main purpose of the fund is actually sustainable fisheries. So where we are putting efforts is actually fishing gears that would be more sustainable, that would be not damaging the bottom of the sea, that would be more friendly, let's say. We also invest a lot into diversification of activities, on promoting aquaculture, for example, as a possible alternatives and so on, and fisheries has to be part of the solution. We will also soon be introducing a sector decarbonization plan, ensuring that there is a significant shift and change as regards the vessels and of course, fuels that they use. We need to decarbonize sector, but this is an important backbone of our coastal communities. I agree with you that there is still a lot of effort has to be done, especially in certain regions as regards the fisheries sustainability. And of course, we need to improve and work with the scientific advice that we get. But if you look in the past 15 years, there was a huge progress done. Wherever we have a solid scientific advice for our Fisheries Council, we always set a tag at a sustainable level, and I'm very proud of that. So we need to work a lot on getting that advice, best available scientific advice, to ensure that it will makes our work easier. And then I think the stakeholders, as fishermen and women who are doing this activity, they will also understand the rationale of our decision making.
Thank you so much, Wouter, Pia, and Rimante, for your questions. Now, we still have some time for more questions. I hope you still have energy. We're going to be talking about something that we have mentioned before, the need for action. So we go to our next segment, Our Planet, Our Joint Action. And for the first question, we go to Croatia. Kaja, please go ahead.
Much and hi, I'm here representing Sustainable Development Forum Green Window and also Croatian Youth Network. Thank you for taking this time to participate in discussions like these. I think it's extremely important that decision makers are in contact with youth. I have this question. I'm really interested about your opinion because you're also coming from a smaller country, and I think it's also relatable to you, and it's really frustrating for me. So how do we challenge political opinions that, you know, for smaller countries, because we are not as significant and our carbon footprint, it might not be the greatest, these countries don't have anything to do with, you know, mitigating the consequences of climate change?
Oh, that's a very good question. But I think you should not be, worried about your size of a country and importance. But actually, on contrary, I think small countries have unique agility to actually switch and implement transition much quicker than the large economies, and they can be a role models on the way, showing that change is possible. Because what we want to reach in the end of the day with the Green Deal is not only climate neutrality. We want to show that it's our growth strategy, that we still manage to keep our economy growing while doing that in a sustainable manner. And I think small countries have all the possibilities to do it quicker, to be the first on that change, to be more actually ambitious. And climate change. It's not an issue of one country or even one region. When we speak about biodiversity loss or we speak about climate change, we realize that it's the whole planet who has to be on this path of change. And we have to find a ways, even for those whose carbon footprint is not as large, to ensure that they have the economic growth, that they have the potential, the opportunities created, but not making mistakes that were done by the others. So I think, on contrary, there is a very positive agenda, and smaller countries can use their agility as an advantage on transition.
And also hold others accountable, right? And push them to actually do those changes that are needed. Now we go to Greece. Photios, please ask your question.
Hello, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm here as a European Climate Pact Ambassador, and I represent, as its president, EOS, a newly established initiative aiming to intergenerational empowerment for Europe's green future. So my question to you is, recognizing the negative impact of pollution on people and our planet, are you considering introducing measures that would stop big corporations from polluting the environment, including companies in Europe, but also around the world that may benefit from a European market? Thank you so much.
So I think, it's not only big corporations or small corporations. In the end of the day, pollution and its responsibility and importance is for all of us. Of course, on one hand, of course, we have a very clear rules, and we just introduced a new, actually, increased directive on emissions and etc. So yes, restricting, implementing, filling the implementation gap is among the key priorities. But those standards, they have to be global, and of course there is WHO who we work closely with. But we need to find ways how to ensure that not only our companies subscribe to those higher standards, but actually those who wants to trade in our market. So I think a good precedent now being set with our deforestation legislation, as regards the certain commodities that are actually being sold and landed in new market, that they cannot come from the regions that are associated with deforestation. Same, in future can be seen with certain pollution standards, which, as I said, we have a very clear and strict legislation, and still we need to do more, because the rates and premature deaths, for example, due to air pollution, is still staggering. Not somewhere else, here in Europe. So there is still a lot to be done by us. But I'm happy that we are addressing it through our zero pollution action plan. Actions are very well underway. And most importantly, I see also a completely different approach from decision makers around member states, especially around the larger cities, who are actually willing to implement changes to improve, for example, air quality in the cities. And that means that most likely the citizens are pushing them to do so and giving them a mandate to act. And that's a very important momentum to keep. I think no one would like to live, doesn't matter which part of the world you are, in environment where the air is hard to breathe, where clean water is a luxury. I think that's not a planet that we imagine ourselves.
We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask you to be very straightforward in this last question that we have from Hannah from Luxembourg.
Yes, thank you for your time and commitment from everyone again. I'm representing the Minette UNESCO Biosphere of Luxembourg, where I've been working to try and increase youth engagement. A couple of things that I learned over my time was that reaching youth can be incredibly hard, and the other that opportunities for the youth to engage in action and the environmental issues in local situations are often rare and unattainable for many, and also unsustained. So my question to you, what current or future initiatives will improve community and or youth awareness and commitment to environmental issues, especially in the European Year of Youth context?
Exactly. You started with my answer. I wanted to say that we have a year of youth. We should use it. We saw at the beginning a short clip on a green track, which I think also can help us gather youth, their opinions on the way to CBD COP15 on biodiversity. But overall, I think what's very important, I appreciate this setting very much and discussion with you, but youth involvement in decision making. It's not enough to meet and talk and listen to youth and then continue with the agenda, which not necessarily is matching. So I think youth involvement in decision making is extremely important, and your activity, you being here, is utmost importance, because you are the ambassadors of change, and you can show and sort of to your friends, to other young people around the world, because you are here from different countries within the EU and Europe, that this is all possible, that you can be part of change, you can inspire change, you can have your role in decision making. So there is, I think, a need to use all the possible platform, but most importantly, engage in decision making. And of course, EU decision making gives those tools. For example, of public consultations and so on, where really opinions matters a lot. And I can say that on those very difficult sometimes policies, where we gathered huge attention, huge number of responses from the stakeholders, they actually had that extra push in a decision-making process. So I think it is extremely important of youth direct involvement in the decision making. Let's try to create as many as possible platforms where we get to meet, where we get to talk, but also act. So we discussed many of them already today. Tree planting is just around the corner. Be active, engage with young people, so that they would also realize the importance of biodiversity. They would be the ones pushing the large corporations to change their mentality and ensure that the product that is being offered, sold, is actually according to the highest environmental standards, respecting planetary boundaries.
I see our young Europeans nodding very strongly. I think they're ready to take that action and to get involved into decision making. And I'm sure they're happy to know that you are on board as well. Just very quickly, sum it up, these few key points that you take away from this very interesting discussion with young Europeans.
Well, that was a very interesting discussion with very challenging questions, and thank you very much for these broad discussions on broad topic. I guess you have many more questions, and I'm always ready and happy to meet. Thank you very much for what you're doing, for the inspiration, for organizations that you are leading, because the change, it starts from those very small steps. But as you can see, that change is happening in all member states. So you are connected here today. So meet, talk, and continue. And I will be always happy to support you as much as I can. Once again, thank you very much. That couldn't be more exciting launch of our Green Week today here with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to our young Europeans for your contribution and your very interesting question. And thank you for watching today. The EU Green Week continues, so stay tuned. And as I'd like to say, stay safe and save the planet.